Has Ungrim been saved as part of this new DLC? It's a fantastic question because obviously it implies that there was a problem to begin with, and I think Ungrim specifically always felt like a bit of a loner. He didn't really have anything that was specifically very unique to him, and never made anything that was like above and beyond what the other Dwarf Legendary Lords had. So he often felt forgotten about. And I think now, with the additions of a lot of the new Slayer units and a lot of the other mechanics that exist within Total War Warhammer 3 now, I think he is significantly better, and we're going to break down exactly why that is. So what specifically has changed for Ungrim that makes him so much better now? Well, I want to break it down by showcasing me attacking this element, and you can see the Doomseekers here have 96 weapon strength, 96 melee attack. They have unbelievable good stats with 70 charge bonus, 60 speed. Now these boys are deja vu speedrunning. We're fast for a dwarf! They bloody are fast, you know what I mean? That is extremely, extremely quick for a Slayer unit. Because that's, what Ungrim does. He increases its speed for infantry units. You have a lot of tech specifically that gives you access to, increase of speed for your infantry. And obviously you have the plus 20% speed from the Slayer Oath. So you have very, 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 very quick Slayers. But that's just one of the pieces of the puzzle. You've got really quick Slayers now, so basically like cavalry. You also have Journey's End, which has been upgraded as part of Ungrim's new tech. So this is Journey's End used to be the same thing for back it was in the day. It was 75% and now it's back to 50%. But what this kind of indicates is that there's going to be a bit of a problem once you get below that 50% threshold because you're going to lose a lot of entities, right? But thankfully now we have access to replenishment heroes. So that was one of the biggest factors of what made Dwarves struggle, is they had such little replenishment. So you'd go for a fight with Slayers, they'd take a lot of damage, and you would struggle to do another battle. Now, that's not really necessarily the case, because you have a lower threshold of when they're going to die, but you also have a lot more replenishment, which makes it so much better. So we're going to go through Garagrim, and as you can see specifically, Garagrim will give upkeep reduction, he'll give experience, and you get access to the weapon strength. And with the DLC, you get Garagrim very, very quickly. You just need 8 Slayer units, and that's it, and you can have access to him. And he makes your army significantly stronger, especially because of the replenishment. But you can get the Demon Hero, Demon Slayer Hero, gives you replenishment as well. Or you can get Felix, he also gives replenishment. So I also want to mention that we obviously buff up Slayers quite a lot. We're almost doubling their weapon strength with the amount of bonuses you can get access to, which is kind of crazy. So to break it down, Ungrim gives better Journey's End, he gives a lot of weapon strength, and he gives an insane amount of speed, which helps you significantly. Also, you get an insane amount of casualty replenishment rate, so you are pretty much guaranteed to have 50% casualty replenishment, so you will replenish your Slayers in 2 turns, which from like 1 unit to all the way to 100% is kind of crazy in 2 turns, right? And another one to mention, Malachi McKayson specifically has a skill that increases his weapon strength of all Slayers within armies faction-wide. So we get another 10% on top of that, and a 10% upkeep reduction, and missile strength 10%. It's honestly bonkers, the level of stats that amplify with one another. And to go over this one, this is obviously the... this guy looks like PS1 Hagrid. I don't know why. Anyway, moving on. So you can see we have replenishment heroes as well. So we get replenishment through the Dragon Slayers specifically, which is obviously super, super nice. So yeah, we get a lot of amplifications to make these guys really, really strong. Their stat line is honestly bonkers. And we get to the ability where we can make these Slayers ridiculously powerful because they have so many things that add on to each other. And the best thing is, that is not all. Now, a lot of that is the free DLC stuff on top of some of the DLC changes. But we can see we have other access of units. Obviously we have the Grudge Settlers, Slayers, and we have, the Thunder Barges and things like that. And I think it's very important to mention that, the Thunder Barges you have access to enable your armies to play in different ways, right? So Thunder Barge have fantastic single entity damage, that'll allow you to do a lot of killing of single entities if your Slayers aren't up to the task, right? But typically speaking, you'd expect them to be so. And it's very quick that you can kind of like populate armies. And like I mentioned, if you do have that significant war of attrition where you're struggling to kind of keep your army healthy, you can throw in these specific units to ensure that you're continuously fighting at 100%. You are rewarded for playing very aggressively now as the Dwarves as part of the Age of Reckoning. Which basically means that you have to hit a certain amount of grudges, and you'll gain bonuses depending on that. I'll link the video of my Dwarf video that I go over all the free LC changes, but this is specific to Ungrim and what makes him better. So yeah, the Garagrim definitely helps out because you get such a strong early game fighter, because having anytime you've got anti-infantry, it's really good against a lot of the small single entities that you may fight, so like the goblin shamans and things like that. Anytime you have access to that. And as we see, as part of the tier 5, we can get access into the new Goblin Hewer. So the Goblin Hewer is a really interesting one in that you have Slayers looking after it. So Slayers are the ones that are fighting and shooting the Goblin Hewer. But one of the interesting things is that obviously they will do unbelievable amounts of damage from a missile perspective. You will kill pretty much anything, right? So you have 38 shots per volley. Anything is going to die if you allow these guys to shoot, but they only have 80 range. So imagine them like an Iron Drake, the previous Iron Drakes that have 80 range. Envision them like that. I think that's one of the best ways that I can describe it, is that you will have very, very short range, but they will do a lot of damage to whatever they're fighting. And the benefit of them as well is I think there's 40 entities that are controlling the Goblin Hewers. So once they get off the Goblin Hewers, you have 40 Slayers that can fight just the same as a normal default Slayer. Obviously, that's really, really great, but is it going to be more effective than having more Slayers? It depends on the armies you're fighting. So if you're against a lot of a lot of large entities, they will have places within your composition, and you might as well use them and experiment with them. But like I mentioned, the Thunder Barges will do a ton of work. They will fundamentally always allow you to kill single entities if you don't want to take attrition as part of fighting towards them. These Thunder Barges can fly over, do a ton of work, and be an absolute nuisance. And they're really, really cool like that. So from a melee perspective, we've had massive upgrades because we have anti-infantry and we have anti-large in our Slayer melee roster with armor piercing as well. So we have armor piercing anti-large, armor piercing anti-infantry. All of that is absolutely fantastic. Now let's discuss about other things that are within the roster now. So we also have access into the Grudge Rackers. And these guys are fantastic, but imagine like the blunderbuss. They are very close quarters. The damage that they do is very, very high. But do they really fit within the Dwarven composition at only 90 range? It depends on the kind of player you are, right? If you're somebody that likes to zug and run at stuff like I am, you can build your armies like this accordingly. I just like to run at stuff. And this works really well for me. But in the early game, I will be using stuff like the Grudge Rackers if I so need the kind of level of armor piercing that it provides, because you can kill single entities really, really, really quickly. But then again, you have the Troll Hammers as well, which have been buffed, by the way, to 170 range, which is fantastic. But typically speaking, if you have your Dragon Slayers and you have your Slayers, these Slayer Pirates, by the way, are fantastic at the same time. They are, imagine Free Company militias on crack. They are really, really high armor piercing missiles, alongside having really good stat line, right? So they are something that you can utilize to chase down units, to be a flanking force, to do a lot of damage with their range. You have a lot more options, whereas beforehand, if you only took Slayers, it was a case of, if they have ranged, I'm going to take a lot of damage. And that's just the simple, outliner of it. Most of the time you don't have access into a lot of artillery that can thus protect you. And one of the biggest things that you'll often see in the early game when you're recruiting, from my experience, you'll take this province and you'll start moving down to the south, and you'll want to be recruiting as many Slayers as possible as part of getting Garagrim, because you want to get them in your army as soon as you're able to. But yeah, talking about the other units as well, I mean, like I said with the Goblin Hewer, I mean, it's a great unit, but I think you'd probably rather have some kind of like Grudge Thrower, because anytime you've got really short range, you may want to use, a Grudge Racker at the same time, because it purely depends on what you're fighting against, what your playstyle is, right? Early game, the Gyrocopters are unbelievably broken with the rework that they've done. These guys are really strong. The Tier 3 variant, not so good, but the Gyrobombers are really good as well. So your composition can look something akin to like having a couple of Gyrocopters, having a lot of Slayers, and then maybe a couple of the Grudge Throwers from a Tier 2 perspective. And as you scale up, you can obviously put more Slayers within your army. And to summarize, I think it's very important to notice and to call out that the Doomseekers now give options that we previously never had. We have very, very durable, reliable anti-infantry options now. And the Slayers in general, as you can see, are absolutely super speed demons. So running at this army, I have no worries in the slightest way, shape, or form that these guys are going to get in trouble. With the threshold of the 50%, I'm going to speed it up just so we can see it. With the 50% speed here, even the Doomseekers, look, you can see all the way down. Look at that. they're still alive, and now they're going to start losing entities. So they're fighting at such an insanely good, at such a good rate because they're so durable, they're hardly losing entities. And it's making them very, very, very effective within melee specifically. Obviously, I've fast forwarded this and just sort of ran them at the enemy. And as we can see, obviously, the results are way better here. If I were to have put my anti-large variant of Slayers on the left side to deal with the mammoths, obviously they would have performed way better. But just for the visual demonstrations, we don't take an awful lot of damage here. We're not taking super, super crazy damage. We are very, very, very capable of killing the most of what's being sent at us. And that's one of the biggest things, Beforehand, you would struggle very much when it comes to significantly large armies because of the war of attrition. You would just take so much damage where you would struggle to maintain and keep fighting. But with the changes, we now are definitely in a much better spot. And obviously, we'll throw out this ability as well. I love this Whirlwind of Death. It's such a cool ability. And it very much makes a difference when it comes to being in melee. You can see here that the Slayer blob is, one not to be messed with. These guys are doing a fantastic job of holding the line. And yeah, I think overall, guys, if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the Slayers are in such a significantly better spot. And Ungrim is very strong right now. And I just wanted to show, as part of that battle, we only lost 54 of the entities. But if we go back to our army now, and the replenishment we gained, we didn't lose a single entity from fighting against 2 armies. So, with that bombshell, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Make sure to check out my other content on the screen now.